a troublemaker, girl.
Welcome to Smart Life. I am Dr. Gina. Let me ask you something. Have you ever known a psychopath? Could someone in your workplace be a psychopath? Would you know? How can you tell? Are all or any of our politicians today psychopaths? It would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Could someone in your family be a psychopath? And if they are, what can you do? And perhaps the most painful of all these questions, are you a psychopath? Well, first, just to clarify, what is the difference between psychopath and the less dangerous sociopath? The terms are often used interchangeably, even by mental health professionals, but the symptoms are somewhat consistent between the two. A basic lack of conscience, no moral compass, manipulative, a low range of emotions, interpersonally insensitive, but the psychopath is deadly. He is well-spoken, he's charismatic, fearless, controlling, socially potent, habitually a liar, calm to a disturbing degree in the face of chaos, and cold-hearted. They are masters at blaming others. In an article by David Freeman in Huffington Post Science, he quotes clinical psychologist Dr. Stout, affiliated with Harvard, who points out that though the psychopath may not feel the higher emotions, like love and guilt, for example, they may not have actual consciences, but they study those of us who do, and they simply pretend. Kind of frightening, huh? That's to be one of the most frightening thoughts I've ever read. Psychologists say that early signs of psychopathy include compulsive lying, blaming others for failures on shortcomings, and often torture of animals just for curiosity's sake. Psychopaths tend to do things to study consequences without concern for the long-term impact, especially on others. I know, it sounds like a lot of our politicians today, and it might be, not to mention any names. As Mr. Freeman points out in his article, psychopaths make a great first impression. He offers up the examples of Hitler, Pol Pot, Ceausescu, and he points to their charisma and their ability to garner attention through outrageous behaviors. And the more I read about them, I noticed some real present-day examples. Psychopaths often act audaciously without regard for those affected later. When accused, they offer excuses for their reckless and outrageous actions, like taking luxury vacations while an economy is collapsing, for example. And then they also blame others, like Bush, like the Koch brothers, like the Tea Party, not to mention any names. And the most manipulative of manipulators, they don't have to kill with their own hands, because you see, the best of psychopaths can do that with others' hands while keeping their hands clean. Benghazi, Fast and Furious. Need I continue? They lurk, they're out there, they are in our schools, they are in our businesses, and they are in our families. Perhaps nothing is as frightening as those who are in our heads. Those of us who study neuroscience for fun talk about it as if it's always them, always someone else that is messed up, and we just want to be the ones who help solve the others' problems, right? But what if the psychopath you were studying was you? That's exactly what happened to James Fallon. He was going along through life studying brain scans of psychopaths and non-psychopaths, trying to determine if there were specific correlating traits that could shed some sort of light on the neurological makeup of the psychopath, when he came across a discovery. At the time, he was also looking for the anatomical brain similarities between those with Alzheimer's. So he had scanned his family and he had scanned himself. He came across this one scan who had notably low activity in the frontal lobe of the brain, and that's the area that is attached to empathy and morality. He recognized that scan belonged to a pronounced psychopath, and he then realized it was his own scan. What do you do with that little piece of information? Well, author and neuroscientist James Fallon says if you are a psychopath, not all is lost, if you care. Dr. Fallon says that for children, a nurturing environment is key, but one that does not tolerate lies and manipulations and abuses. He says that parents can actually use the inherent narcissism in their child to challenge them to be better, because in the narcissism in the mind of the psychopath will hunger to be the best. So if they're raised and nurtured to be good, they can be voraciously good. And even though they might not be motivated to do good based on intrinsic motivators like compassion or empathy, they can do great amounts of good just to be the best. The outcome is the same, even if the motivation is not